Because a lot of people want to become product managers, companies are in a position to be very selective with who they hire. That means that during the interview process, interviewers are weeding out candidates that are not top-notch. In this video, I'm going to talk about 5 common mistakes that you should avoid during these interviews, and avoiding these will significantly increase your chances of landing an offer. To jump in, the first mistake I see candidates make is rambling a lot and not getting to the point. When asked a question, candidates may start immediately answering without thinking about what they'll say first. Once they realize what they're actively saying isn't the best answer, they go in circles or start over their answer to something better. This makes it very difficult for the interviewer to follow along, and it demonstrates that the candidate is not a structured thinker, which is something interviewers are actively looking for. Instead of immediately starting to answer, take a couple of seconds to think about what you're going to say. You can even say, "That's a really interesting question. Let me think about a good example here," and then pause while you think. Once you're ready, you should launch into your answer using a framework like the STAR framework. One additional tip here is that if you do find yourself midway through an answer and you feel like it won't really represent you well or answer the question in the best way, it is totally acceptable to pause and say something along the lines of, "I actually remembered a different example that may more directly answer your question. Would you mind if I share that story instead?" And your interviewer will very likely allow you to tell that different story. The second mistake I see is when candidates are too honest and end up inadvertently communicating red flags to the interviewer. I'll share a couple examples here and explain why it's not wise to say these. You may say, "Actually, I've never used your product and don't really know what it does. Can you share more about it?" Which shows you lack familiarity with the company and don't really care to do research. The interviewer will know that you're not that serious about this interview and will likely reject you. You may say, "I ended up disregarding the feedback my tech lead gave to me about the feature we were working on because frankly, they had never worked on it in the past and I had." This demonstrates arrogance and a high ego, which are character traits that demonstrate that you are going to be very difficult to work with. You will likely be rejected if you said something like that. Another example here is you may say, "I don't really like to use data to make decisions because I think relying on data gets in the way of real innovation," which shows that you don't really fully understand the value of data in modern tech companies and believe you know best. The best PMs have low egos and are always willing to be proven wrong with data or research. This leads to the third mistake to avoid, and that's not mentioning analytics or users throughout your answers. I'll dive into both of these. Data is a critical aspect of product management, and by not referencing it throughout your answers, you're demonstrating to your interviewer that is not top of mind for you or part of your regular process. Data for product managers is similar to science for doctors. Doctors rely on science as a basis for understanding health, disease, and the functioning of the body. They use it to diagnose conditions and come up with treatment plans. If they know that a specific medicine may negatively impact an aspect of their patient, they will not prescribe that medication. In a similar sense, if PMs track certain data points and identify that a specific feature is not performing well for the business, they should not roll that feature out to the entire user base. Can you imagine if you were interviewing a doctor to work at a hospital and they demonstrated that they don't really believe in science? That would be a disaster. So the takeaway here is to remember to always mention data throughout your interviews so that your interviewer knows that it is an important aspect of your decision-making process. Moving on to users, it's really important that you always bring answers back to the users. Interviewers want to know that you have a strong understanding of who your users are, what problems they have, and how the solutions you build will directly solve those problems. So if you're giving an answer and sharing a story about a past experience, make sure to frequently bring it back to the users. If you can share quotes from users, that's even better. Start out an answer by saying, "So at ABC Company, our target user was a cattle farm owner. One of the problems these cattle farmers have is keeping track of the health of their cattle." And then at the end of the answer, you can say something like, "So this feature we built helped our cattle farmer users keep better track of the health of their cattle, which significantly decreased our churn rates." From this answer, it's clear that you have a strong understanding of your users, their problems, and you're tying back your work to how it solves problems for them. To go back to my doctor analogy, this would be like if you interviewed a doctor and they never mentioned working with patients. That would be crazy. The fourth mistake I see is when candidates ask very weak questions at the end of the interview. Questions can actually tip candidates over the edge if they're done very well. At worst, they can be viewed as red flags by the interviewer. I would consider a weak question something like, "So, how big is your team?" or "So, do you take a lot of vacation?" In an interview, you only have so much time to ask questions, so you don't want to waste the opportunity on something that won't be that important to know. The questions you end up asking should be very well thought out and demonstrate that you have done a lot of research about the company and the role. Asking a question like, "I've seen a lot of investment in the health tech AI space recently. Is your team actively actively researching ways to leverage AI to improve the patient experience, or do you kind of view it as too early to adopt? This shows that you're thinking about the broader space in which the company you're interviewing with operates and thinking about how the user experience can be improved. When coming up with questions, think about who you will be interviewing with, like their role, their background, etc. Think about the user base, the business model, the challenges they may be facing with their competition or in the space generally. You really want to impress your interviewers with the questions that you come up with. The fifth and final mistake is very related, and it's something I commonly see with candidates, and it's that they don't do much research into the company at all. They go into the interview never having used the product before or even researching what it does. They don't know the competitors, they don't know what type of people even use the product, they don't know the business fundamentals like how they make money. These are typically things that you can find online through research, so when you get into an interview and you get asked a question about their own company and you don't know these things, it really conveys a lack of interest in the role. And companies really want people who are very passionate about joining their company. So please make time before the interview to do some light research on the company. Make an account with their product, sign up for their newsletter, read their blog, view their pricing, check out review sites or Reddit threads about it. Generally try to learn about the company and you'll feel a lot more confident actually going into the interview. If you found these tips helpful, please drop a like and subscribe for more PM content. Thanks for watching, and check out other PM videos on my channel.